They thought my grief would leave me powerless. They thought being childless meant I had no legacy to protect. They were wrong. It happened in the most ordinary of places, a probate office, beige walls and buzzing fluorescent lights. My sister Leah sat across from me in her Sunday best dress, her smile sharp as a blade. She leaned close enough for others to hear and whispered, "All that rank, all that service, and no kids. Who are you even leaving it all to? Your medals." The chuckle that followed was soft but cruel, meant to draw the room to her side. For a moment the air itself seemed to pause. I could feel every eye, every breath, waiting to see if I would crack. On the table between us lay two artifacts, a sealed manila envelope stamped Last Will and Testament Monroe Trust, and a blue folder marked SGLI Beneficiary Designation. Paper. Just paper. But paper doesn't panic. Paper speaks when the living can't. What Leah didn't know was that my husband had planned for this very moment. 4 sentences, written in precise, unshakable language, would turn her smirk into silence and her ambition into ashes. She thought she was about to inherit my life. Instead, she was about to watch her own greed exposed for everyone to see. What would you do if family turned your pain into leverage? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. My name is Claire, and before my husband Daniel's death, I thought I understood what family loyalty meant. I was wrong. If you had asked anyone at a Sunday barbecue or Christmas dinner, they would have told you my sister Leah was the golden child. She had the smile, the 2 kids, the picture-perfect Facebook posts of school recitals and birthday cakes. Parents gushed over her like she was carrying the whole family legacy forward. Me? I was the quiet one. No children, no spotlight, just a Marine officer who spent more time in the field or at a desk analyzing intelligence reports than snapping pictures of cupcakes. For years, Leah treated my life like a punchline. Medals don't call you mommy, she'd laugh across the table, a wine glass in her hand. Or, all those deployments, all those late nights, what's the point if you don't have anyone to pass it on to? My parents never corrected her. My father would give a half smile, the kind that says just ignore her, and my mother would quickly change the subject. But the silence was permission. Permission for Leah to keep making her point. In her world, children were proof of value, and without them, I was empty. I learned early to absorb the blows without showing a crack. It was the same skill I'd perfected in uniform. In the Corps, you don't rise to every insult. You observe, you log, and you move forward. Quiet competence carries farther than loud retaliation. So I sat at those dinners listening to her laughter and filed each word away like intel. I had learned from Quantico that keeping records of pressure points mattered, and Leah was nothing if not predictable. Her attacks always circled back to my childlessness. Daniel, though, saw it differently. He used to tell me, planning removes panic. It was his mantra, one he lived by in the cockpit, in the command tent, and at home. He believed in being prepared for every eventuality, financial, personal, even emotional. Together we built a binder, thick with documents no one else in my family would ever think to prepare. Powers of attorney, insurance beneficiaries, a trust draft, letters of intent. He said it wasn't about paranoia, it was about respect. Respect for each other's work, our service, our sacrifices. Leah mocked that too. Who are you going to leave it to? She sneered once, when she saw the binder sitting on our kitchen counter during a family visit. Your books? Your medals? That apartment full of maps and military souvenirs? She said it loud enough for my parents to hear. They didn't laugh, but they didn't stop her either. The silence in the room was as loud as the insult. I looked at Daniel that day, waiting for a flicker of anger, but he only smiled calmly and closed the binder. Later, when we were alone, he tapped the cover and said, "That's the point. When the noise comes, and it always comes, we'll already have the answers written down. They can laugh, Claire, but paper doesn't panic. Protocol doesn't panic." I didn't realize how much those words would matter until he was gone. Leah's confidence grew with every family event. She made pointed jokes about our empty chairs at Thanksgiving. She whispered to my mother, not quietly enough, that it was a shame all of Claire's discipline and all of Daniel's service hadn't produced grandchildren. And more than once, she hinted, half serious, half smirk, that when my parents passed, she would be the one to keep the family home in the bloodline. She said it as though I were already invisible. For a long time I thought enduring it was enough, that staying calm, staying quiet, was its own form of victory. But I didn't yet understand the battlefield I was standing on. Because Leah wasn't just mocking me out of insecurity. She was positioning herself. She was planting the idea, year after year, that everything we had built, our savings, our house, Daniel's service benefits, would someday be hers by default. She thought silence meant surrender. She thought my lack of children meant I had no legacy to protect. She was wrong. Leah never attacked head-on. She preferred little cuts. Small humiliations slipped into conversations like hidden blades. But after Daniel and I crossed into our 30s, her jokes sharpened into pressure. She had a way of performing kindness with a cruel edge. At one family cookout, she raised her glass and toasted to the next generation. Then she turned to me with a smile too wide to be innocent. "Don't worry, Claire. You can babysit my kids anytime you want to practice." Laughter rippled across the patio. My parents chuckled nervously, as though laughter might smooth the sting. I only sipped my water and stayed quiet, but inside I logged it. Another entry in the file of Leah's small campaigns. Daniel saw it too. That night he pulled the binder from the cabinet and slid a new form inside, a fresh SGLI beneficiary designation. "This is why we keep everything current," he said. "People think wills and policies are about death. They're not. They're about control. You don't leave control to chance, Claire." He tapped the paper with his pen. "We make the decisions, not them." Leah, though, had her own ideas about control. When she thought she was being subtle, she started bringing me articles. "I saw this blog," she'd say, sliding her phone across the table, "about how childless couples should name siblings or nieces as beneficiaries. You know, just so everything stays in the family." I would hand the phone back without looking. "Thanks, Leah. We've got it covered." She mistook my calm for weakness. She pressed harder. One afternoon after Sunday lunch, she cornered me in the kitchen while the others lounged in the living room. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Look, I know you're the organized one, but you don't want to make this harder than it needs to be. When the time comes, it'll be me taking care of Mom and Dad. Shouldn't the house come to me? You won't need it." I looked at her, steady and silent. Years and intelligence had trained me well. Never give away more than you intend. Later I told Daniel. His face didn't shift from its usual calm, but his hand rested on mine for a long moment. "She thinks bloodline means ownership," he said, "but she doesn't understand protocol. You don't ask for what isn't yours. You earn trust, and you respect boundaries. She's forgotten both." The pressure mounted after Daniel rotated through pre-deployment training. Every time he updated paperwork, Leah seemed to sniff it out, circling like a vulture. Once, after overhearing us talk about Daniel's thrift savings plan, she quipped, "Well, if you don't have kids, at least someone in the family should benefit when you're gone, right?" The room went silent. She grinned as if she'd scored a point. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. And I realized silence had become their habit too. They would never stand between Leah and her targets, so I learned not to expect them to. I stayed disciplined. I didn't argue. Instead, I doubled down on preparedness. Daniel and I added a pour-over trust to our estate plan. We attached a no-contest clause. We uploaded every digital document into an encrypted vault, each login monitored by a timestamp. Each step wasn't just about securing money. It was about securing dignity. Leah didn't know it, but every cruel joke, every smug suggestion, was pushing me closer to a quiet line of defense she would never see coming. Her last push came just weeks before Daniel's accident. At a family dinner, when conversation drifted to future plans, she leaned across the table and said, "Honestly, Claire, it's a waste. All those savings, all that rank, you don't have heirs. You should just sign it over now. Save everyone the trouble later." Her voice was casual. Her smirk was not. I felt my jaw tighten. I could feel Daniel beside me, calm as ever, his hand resting lightly on my wrist under the table. He didn't need to say a word. The binder at home already held the answer. Leah thought she had found leverage. In reality, she was building the very case that would undo her. There are certain sounds you never forget. The crack of a rifle at a funeral, the hollow echo of boots on pavement during a final salute, the sharp intake of breath when a folded flag is handed to the widow. When Daniel's casket was lowered into the ground wrapped in the stars and stripes he had served under, my world narrowed to those sounds. The chaplain's words blurred. The sun was blinding against polished brass. My hands shook as I received the flag, but my face did not. Years of discipline trained me to keep composure, even in the worst moment of my life. Leah, though, didn't see grief. She saw opportunity. From the first hour of Daniel's wake, she took over like a commander without orders. She directed casseroles into the fridge, rearranged chairs, and spoke as though the house already belonged to her. Guests whispered condolences, and in the background I heard her say, "Well, at least Claire doesn't have kids to worry about. Makes it easier for her." Easier. I stood there, frozen, clutching Daniel's medals in my hand, the words carving deeper than the grief itself. My parents said nothing. The worst came late that night. The house was still filled with visitors, a quiet hum of small talk and muffled prayers. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Leah. At first I thought it was another family arrangement or some message about food, but when I opened it, my blood ran cold. Attached was a forwarded thread between Leah and a local realtor. The subject line read, "Timeline for listing, Monroe property." Her message was short, almost casual. "My sister is in shock, but we'll be ready to move quickly. Want the house on the market before values slip." And she had CC'd my parents. Whether it was a mistake or a deliberate show of control, I'll never know. But the implication was clear. In her mind, Daniel's death wasn't even final before she began carving up what we had built together. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the screen. Around me, the house still smelled of flowers and coffee. I could hear the low murmur of relatives downstairs, and in my inbox was proof, hard, undeniable proof of Leah's greed. I didn't scream. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Daniel's vault on my laptop. I dragged the email into a folder labeled Leah Pressures. My hands were steady as I saved the files. Daniel had always told me, paper doesn't panic. Now his system was protecting me even in death. The next day, Leah tried to act as if nothing had happened. She floated around the kitchen, whispering about funeral costs, family responsibilities, and how she'd help me make the tough decisions. At one point, she leaned in and murmured, "You can't do this alone, Claire. You'll need someone who knows how to keep the family home in the bloodline." I looked at her, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. This wasn't about sibling rivalry or even her jealousy. It was about entitlement. She believed that because I had no children, no heirs in her definition, my life's work and Daniel's sacrifices were hers to claim. But she had overplayed her hand. By the end of the week, an email arrived from Major Patel, Daniel's chosen executor. His subject line was clinical. Reading of the will, Friday 0900. The location was a modest office downtown, beige walls and fluorescent lights. Nothing dramatic, nothing ceremonial, but to me it might as well have been a battlefield. Leah texted me that night, "We'll make this easy for you. Don't worry, I'll handle the hard stuff." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for the first time since Daniel's death, I realized something. This was no longer about grief alone. This was about respect, dignity, and the quiet strength of planning. Leah thought she was circling a weakened widow. In reality, she was walking straight into Daniel's final strategy, and she didn't even know it. The office where Daniel's will was read could not have been more ordinary. Beige walls, humming fluorescent lights, the faint scent of old carpet. Yet to me it felt like the heart of a battlefield. Not because there were raised voices or chaos, but because every decision Daniel had made, every line of planning we had done together was about to take effect. Major Patel, a retired Marine JAG officer, sat at the head of the table. His uniform was gone, replaced by a gray suit, but his bearing hadn't changed. Calm, exact, precise. On the table in front of him was a thick manila envelope, stamped in bold type, "Last Will and Testament, Monroe Trust." Leah arrived like she was stepping into her victory parade. She wore a bright dress, her hair done like it was Easter Sunday. She brought her husband along, as if to make the case for her own family unit. My parents shuffled in quietly behind her, their expressions tight, avoiding mine. I sat across from them, my hands folded, Daniel's wedding band threaded on a chain around my neck. Patel cleared his throat, his voice level. "We're here to review the final wishes of Captain Daniel Monroe, USMC. This document was prepared in accordance with military estate planning protocol, updated 3 months prior to his death. Please note, all designations have been verified and are current." Leah leaned back in her chair, her smile fixed. I could almost hear her thoughts. Finally, Patel began with the basics. Primary beneficiary of service members' group life insurance, thrift savings plan, and retirement accounts, Claire Monroe. Leah's smile flickered. "Excuse me," she said too quickly. "Don't those things usually default to the family?" Patel adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Monroe is the family. Beneficiary designations override wills. They are legally binding. Non-probate. Untouchable." The word hung in the air. Untouchable. He moved on. "All real property, personal belongings, and liquid assets are directed to the Monroe Quiet Strength Trust." He paused, with a no-contest clause. "Any beneficiary who challenges this trust forfeits their interest and receives $1. Leah laughed, brittle and sharp. "That's ridiculous. Who even put something like that in?" Patel looked up, his eyes steady. "People who plan. People who understand families." Then came the part Daniel must have written with full knowledge of Leah's nature. "Specific bequest. A modest cash gift to my sister-in-law Leah." Patel's voice was clinical, but the words landed like iron. "This gift is conditional. It is contingent upon documented respect toward my spouse. Any harassment, coercion, or disparagement of her nullifies this bequest." Leah's cheeks flushed crimson. "Documented? That's absurd. What documents?" Patel reached into the folder. He laid down 3 pages, a printed email chain with the realtor, her CC to my parents, and a voicemail transcript she had left on my phone. "Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C," he said calmly. "All within the past month." The room went silent. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother looked down at her lap. Leah's voice rose. "Desperate. That was private. I was just trying to help. You can't use that." Patel's voice cut through her panic like a blade. "You violated the condition. Therefore the gift is revoked. Your designated share passes instead to the Quiet Strength Scholarship Fund for military spouses in STEM." I watched the words sink into her. For the first time, Leah's bravado cracked. She wasn't the confident sister with the perfect family anymore. She was exposed, caught by the very arrogance that had fueled her all these years. And in that moment I heard Daniel's voice in my head, calm and steady as always. "Planning removes panic." Patel closed the folder. "That concludes the reading. All designations and conditions are final." Leah sat frozen, her mouth half open. My parents stared at the table, unwilling to meet my eyes. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I simply folded my hands tighter and felt Daniel's ring press against my collarbone. The noise had stopped. The planning had spoken. The meeting ended, but the silence didn't. Leah sat rigid in her chair, her face caught between disbelief and fury. Her husband leaned close, whispering urgently, but she didn't seem to hear him. My parents shifted uneasily, their eyes darting anywhere but toward me. Finally Leah broke. "This isn't over," she snapped, her voice trembling with rage. "I'll contest this whole thing. You think a piece of paper can stop me?" Patel adjusted his glasses, unfazed. His tone remained clinical, as though he were briefing a junior officer. "You're free to attempt, Mrs. Reynolds, but be advised, the trust includes a no-contest clause. Should you file, discovery will include all correspondence, digital and physical, relating to your conduct toward Claire Monroe. Attorney's fees may be shifted to you if deemed frivolous, and the forfeiture of your interest is already triggered." Her mouth opened, then closed. For
For a moment she looked like she was searching for air. I said nothing. Silence was my weapon. The days that followed carried their own ripple effects. Leah tested her threats with late-night calls to my parents, her voice rising behind closed doors. I overheard enough to know she was still trying to rally them, pleading for fairness, spinning herself as the victim of cold paperwork. But fairness had nothing to do with it. Daniel had built a fortress, not of brick and mortar, but of signatures and statutes. He had predicted her moves with the same precision he used to plot a flight path, and slowly people outside the family began to learn what had happened. It started small. A neighbor who had overheard Leah's realtor call mentioned it at church. Then someone repeated it at the grocery store. Within a week, whispers circulated that Leah had tried to sell my house before the funeral flowers had even wilted, that she had been cut out of the will, not by accident, but by her own actions. The community response was subtle but devastating. Invitations stopped arriving. Parents at school events avoided her. Her name, once spoken with admiration, carried an edge of scandal. It wasn't punishment from me. It was the natural consequence of her own choices, playing out in the open. My parents felt the shift too. One evening my mother called, her voice low. "Claire, maybe you could show some grace. She's your sister. She made a mistake." I listened. I let the silence stretch before I answered. "Grace isn't giving away what Daniel safeguarded," I said quietly. "It's honoring the discipline he lived by, and I won't betray that." She didn't argue. She simply sighed, and I could hear the weight of years in her breath. Meanwhile, Patel moved efficiently. Accounts were transferred. The Quiet Strength Scholarship Fund was established with its first endowment. I signed the papers in his office, the ink crisp against the page, knowing Daniel's intention was now alive in the world. Weeks later, an email arrived from the foundation. Subject line: "First award granted." The message was simple. "Dear Mrs. Monroe, we are honored to inform you that the first Quiet Strength Scholarship has been awarded to a Marine spouse pursuing engineering at a state university. Your husband's legacy will directly support her journey. Thank you." I read the line 3 times, my eyes blurring with tears I had refused to shed for weeks. Leah had tried to erase me, to claim what wasn't hers. Instead, Daniel's planning had transformed her greed into someone else's opportunity. No shouting match could have achieved that. No angry confrontation could have delivered that outcome. It was protocol, discipline, and foresight that had turned the tide. And in the quiet of my home, I whispered aloud the words Daniel had said so many times before. Planning removes panic. For Leah, the panic had just begun. Life after the reading of Daniel's will didn't feel like triumph. It felt like the quiet aftermath of a storm. Debris everywhere, air heavy, silence deeper than sound. In the first weeks, I lived by small routines. I rose early, laced my shoes, and ran the same 3-mile loop Daniel and I used to take on Sunday mornings. Back home, I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table where his binder once lived. The binder wasn't needed anymore. Patel had executed everything, but I kept it there anyway, as a reminder of the discipline that had saved me. Leah tried a few more times to break through. She sent a letter, written in shaky cursive, asking me to reconsider for the sake of family. I didn't reply. I filed it in the same vault where her realtor email already sat. Another record of pressure. My parents called less. When they did, the tone was clipped, cautious, as if they were afraid I might use their words against them too. In truth, I didn't need to. Silence had become its own boundary. Instead of focusing on them, I focused on what Daniel had left behind. The Quiet Strength Scholarship took shape quickly. I worked with the foundation, reviewing applications from military spouses who wanted to study STEM. Their essays were full of determination. I recognized the same quiet resilience Daniel had loved in people. One woman wrote about coding by flashlight while her husband was deployed. Another described holding down 3 jobs while pursuing a degree in physics. Reading their words, I felt something I hadn't in months: purpose. When the first recipient's thank you letter arrived, I framed it, not as decoration, but as evidence. Evidence that Daniel's foresight had turned potential greed into tangible strength for someone else. My life began to change in small, steady ways. I volunteered once a month at a military family resource center, giving short workshops on estate readiness. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew the basics of preparation, powers of attorney, beneficiary designations, keeping records clear. At the end of each session, I always repeated Daniel's line: "Planning removes panic." Every time I saw heads nod. Some scribbled it down as if it were doctrine. At home, I allowed myself space to grieve properly. I boxed Daniel's uniforms, but I left his challenge coin on the mantle. I kept his mug in the cabinet, chipped handle and all, not as relics of loss, but as pieces of a life that still mattered. One evening, months later, my mother came by alone. She stood awkwardly in my doorway, carrying a casserole she hadn't even tried to disguise as comfort. Over dinner, she admitted softly, "Leah exhausts me. Always has." She didn't defend her, didn't apologize for years of silence, just a tired confession. I listened, then set my fork down. "That may be true," I said, "but exhaustion isn't an excuse for enabling. I don't need explanations anymore. I just need boundaries." She nodded, eyes damp, but she didn't argue. That was new. My boundaries grew stronger with time. I stopped attending family holidays, choosing instead to spend Thanksgiving with fellow veterans, where laughter didn't carry barbs. I stopped checking Leah's social media. I stopped waiting for recognition from people who had already shown me where their loyalty lay. Instead, I built my own definitions. I placed Daniel's challenge coin beside the first scholarship award letter in a shadow box. Beneath them, I added a small brass plaque with the words, "Quiet Strength." It wasn't a shrine, it was a mission statement. Months later, at the first scholarship dinner, I watched a young recipient take the stage. stage. Her voice trembled at first, but then steadied. Captain Monroe's motto was planning removes panic, she said. Because of him, and because of Claire, I can plan my own future without fear. The audience applauded. I sat quietly, my hands folded in my lap, Daniel's ring pressing against my collarbone. For the first time since his death, I felt the weight of my solitude lift. I wasn't childless. I wasn't empty. I was carrying forward a different kind of legacy. One written in preparedness, dignity, and quiet strength. People often mistake silence for weakness. They see a woman without children, and assume she has no legacy, no voice, no strength to defend what matters. But silence can be discipline. It can be the pause before the order, the stillness before the maneuver that changes everything. Leah thought my lack of children meant I had nothing to protect. She thought paperwork was just paper, and that family loyalty meant submission. But Daniel's planning showed her and everyone else that dignity doesn't expire. Respect isn't inherited. It's practiced. I don't take joy in her downfall. The truth is, no victory in battles like these comes without a cost. What remains isn't triumph. It's clarity. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever seen someone underestimated until the truth spoke louder than the noise? If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss these daily stories of protocol, respect, and hidden strength. Share this video with someone who needs the reminder. Quiet doesn't mean weak. We upload a new story every day. Stay with us, your story might be next. Not every battle is fought with fists or raised voices. Some are won with discipline, foresight, and the quiet strength to hold your ground when others expect you to fold. Leah believed silence meant surrender. Daniel's planning proved it meant strategy. And in the end, it wasn't her noise that mattered. It was the truth written down in black and white. Have you ever seen someone underestimated until the moment everything turned? If this story spoke to you, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss these daily stories of protocol, respect, and hidden strength. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that quiet doesn't mean weak. A new story arrives here every day. Stay with us. Your story might be next.